Hi guys, firstly, thank you so much for joining us for our webinar, Taking Your Legal Career Offshore, What You Need to Know. We're going to be covering quite a lot today, so our contact details are at the bottom if there's anything specific that you want to get in touch with myself or Ben about. Just to give you a brief introduction, my name's Lisa Gray. I've been working for Tyler Wren as a legal recruiter for about 10 years now. The team has got boots on the ground in the UK and Australia, and we also have Vicky Cox, who manages jobs in the Cayman Islands, Bermuda, Jersey. She also dabbles a bit in Singapore and Tokyo as well. I myself have spent 4 years specifically placing New Zealand qualified lawyers into Australia. So I guess what we're trying to say is we've got a good grasp on the market.
Yeah, so my name's Ben Holloway. I've been with Tyler Wren for almost 7 years, specifically in the professional service space, and obviously within legal at the moment. So, we'll jump into a bit of an agenda of what we're going to discuss. So, we are going to sort of break down into sort of 3 areas, the Cayman Islands, Bermuda, and the Channel Islands firstly, then Australia. And then England, Ireland, and Scotland. So we'll go through some salaries, some pointers on what is, really useful for you to help me get over there. So from there, we're going to go into a comparison matrix. So that's going to look at various things like what visas you need, the lifestyle in those areas, and also the costs. So we'll run through that as well. And then we're going to go over an area where basically giving you the best chance of securing a great job offshore. So talk through some top tips on how to do that as well. We are doing a Q&A. So if you've got any questions, obviously save those for the end. And then finally, just how to contact us and how we can help. But I think we'll jump straight into the Cayman Islands and Bermuda.
Great, thanks, Ben. So I guess the first thing is for us to understand exactly where these locations are. So as you can see, Cayman Islands and Bermuda sit off of the US. That's why it's a really popular, why those destinations are really popular with expats, because it gives you really easy access to the US. The Channel Islands, so Jersey and Guernsey, are actually just in between France and the bottom of the UK. So again, easy access to Europe and the UK. You're probably thinking why we grouped these locations together. And basically they are all low tax jurisdictions. So what we find is international firms will have hubs in each of these locations. Obviously, they are attractive in terms of an island lifestyle and maybe being a little bit more laid back, as well as paying really great salaries. Also, to add, my colleague Vicky Cox in the UK, she manages all of these client relationships. We're really lucky to be on the PSL for the majority of those international firms in those locations. And she manages that work search for you guys. Obviously, if you are interested, get in touch with us first, and we can make sure that we set up conversations with Vicky on your behalf. So in terms of salary, we can talk through that. In Jersey, and we're using about a New Zealand 4-year PQE for this comparison. On average, in Jersey and Guernsey, salaries would be about £70,000 to £80,000. And then for the Cayman Islands and Bermuda, you're looking around 145k US up to about 160. Skill hotspots, as you can imagine with international firms, they're dealing with a lot of ultra high net worth individuals. So trust, wealth management, structuring, really important. Also regulatory, funds and financial services law, corporate banking and finance, with a bit of litigation and dispute resolution chucked in there within those areas of expertise as well. The other thing that the Caymans do is give full relocation. So firms are used to hiring lots of expats, and they will manage the process in terms of visa, financial assistance, and the whole kit and caboodle. So that's why it can also be really attractive for lawyers to go work there.
The next area we'll look at is Australia, Sydney, Perth, and Melbourne. So those cities are within Australia. Australia is our most popular destination for Kiwis. Obviously, from a visa perspective, it's relatively straightforward and is close to home. So we placed around 50 Kiwis into Australia over the last couple of years. So a very busy area for ourselves. In terms of the cities, so we'll start with Sydney. The salaries for, again, a 4-year PQE New Zealand qualified lawyer would be around 130 to 180,000 Australian dollars. So that's plus super as well, of course. And the reason why that's such a wide range, I guess, is in Sydney, you've got a wide range of firms. So those, international top tier firms right down to boutiques. The boutiques in Australia, we're referring to as more your general practice in New Zealand. So that's why that range is, I guess, quite large. In terms of Perth and Brisbane, both typically are going to be around $10,000 less than Sydney. So again, lifestyle and cost of living in those cities is lower though. So again, it kind of all sort of washes out. In terms of Melbourne, it's been a bit more of a struggle in recent times. Salary is about $10,000 more than, say, an Auckland salary, but it is a very competitive market. Australians do like to move interstate to Melbourne, and a lot of the lawyers in Melbourne don't tend to leave. It's quite a highly sought after area. So that's why it's much more competitive in that area. In terms of the areas in which are busy, the hot skill spots, it does tend to be those lawyers that are specialised that have the best chance in Australia, and the areas that are busy would be, for example, banking and finance, construction, litigation, environmental, insurance is much larger than New Zealand due to no ACC, health and safety, class action, commercial, employment, M&A, just like New Zealand, starting to pick up again, regulatory and public law, although you can't represent the government due to security check requirements. So again, there's those specialist roles, 3 years New Zealand PQE, that are in high demand.
Great. We have also placed lawyers in Australia in more remote areas too.
Nice.
Adelaide is gaining traction, but I've actually also placed someone in a place called Warrnambool, which is on the Ocean Road, a beautiful little spot. So again, if you're thinking more regional for Australia, we can certainly help and do some market mapping on your behalf on that side.
That would be similar to New Zealand. Those regional areas really struggle. I think Timaru or some of those smaller places in the Waikato where there isn't an abundance of lawyers. So if you're open to that lifestyle in Australia, then there's definitely opportunities there as well.
Great. Shall we move on?
Yes.
Oh, the UK. So we're going to focus on England, Ireland, and Scotland now. This has been a really tricky market. Again, you're going to need, at the moment, at least 4 years as an NZ qualified lawyer to have a shot at securing something over there. Salaries are great. So Magic Circle firms, we're looking between £100,000 up to about £140,000. US firms are, again, throwing great money at great candidates. Salaries can range anywhere between £140 up to £250. As an example, we're aware of a newly qualified UK lawyer recently securing £180,000 to enter to be employed by a US firm. Again, we'll see the sliding scale with mid-tier firms. That salary is around 80 to 110, again in pounds. Boutique, again, we're referring to general practice there. They're looking between £60,000 and £100,000. Now, these salaries are very much for London. So when we're talking outside of London, and we will touch on that shortly, you're looking at an average drop between 10k and 30k, basically because of city weighting and the cost of living in London. So in terms of hot skill spots, there are some. We are very much seeing requirement in construction advisory. That's very much due to the government rolling out major projects. Examples of these are multi-billion-dollar project on the HS2 train infrastructure project, as well as lots of universities and hospitals being upgraded in the UK. Also, environmentals in demand, banking and finance, and also litigation, although it's more 6-month contracts for the government. Think of the commissions and public inquiries that have been going on in the UK. So Horizon, the big post office inquiry, you might have seen that on Netflix, and also Grenfell. We are also seeing a little bit of growth in corporate and M&A, but again, the market is really, really light. That's also had a knock-on effect to Australia and Caymans, and that's why we're talking about those other centres, as we are seeing lawyers think about alternatives away from the UK, whilst that is a bit of a flat market. So to talk outside of London, there is demand in some of those other large centres. So think Birmingham, Glasgow, Liverpool, Bristol, Manchester, Sheffield, Dublin. So there is demand for lawyers in those sectors in Dublin. We actually have a contact over there who's seeing some really good growth in that market. And our most recent placement has actually been in Edinburgh. So again, if you're thinking UK and a gateway to Europe, you might want to think outside of London unless you're skilled in those kind of hotspots that we've just talked through. Thanks, Ben.
Awesome. So the next thing that we're going to look at is a country cost matrix. So there is a lot of information here, and so I'm going to sort of pick a couple of points from each of the slides, and obviously this is being recorded, so you can pause this and sort of read through the rest at any given point. So we'll start with the visa and work rights. I'll first point out that we're not licensed immigration advisors, so this is sort of a bit of an overview. We'd always advise to get official advice on immigration at that point. But in terms of Australia, and I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I think we're all aware if you're a New Zealand citizen, it's pretty easy to just sort of move over there and live and work. So that's why it's one of the most popular spots for New Zealanders. Yeah, obviously other visa requirements are needed if you're not a New Zealand citizen. Part of planning, though, if you are a New Zealand resident, part of that planning could be focusing on getting citizenship before making that move. It really does make a big difference when transferring to Australia. So with the UK, so this is obviously both London and outside of London, it requires a skilled worker visa. So it's typically a 2-year visa, although it can be extended by another year, which we see quite often. If you've got British heritage, like a lot of us do, both of us are British, but if you've got that ancestry, there is an ancestry visa, which is definitely worth looking into. But again, you probably want to talk to an immigration advisor about that. In terms of the Cayman Islands, a lot of the people they hire are from offshore, so it is fairly common for a visa to be needed. So it does require sponsorship, and the firms do typically help with that process. The one thing to bear in mind for that, though, is the visa can take up to 6 months. So again, planning that process well in advance is important. So yeah, that's sort of a bit of a touch point on visas. We'll pop down to the next slide. So this one, we've got a cost of living index here. So the way that works is New Zealand is at 100. So we're basing that at 100 and then looking at the difference between these locations. So for example, Australia, we've got 110 to 120. That means that it costs around 10 to 20% more to live in Australia than it does in New Zealand. Obviously, Australia is a big place, so we've kind of lumped that together. But what this isn't taken into consideration is salaries. So it may cost 10 to 20% more to live in Australia, but those salaries are much higher. So you're actually typically better off. So with the UK, London specific, and partially why we've separated this, I think it'll be no surprise. Everyone knows London's quite expensive. So we're looking at about 60 to 70% more expensive to live there than in New Zealand. However, again, if you're in London, you're earning British pound, and it's usually a much higher salary. So outside of the London in the UK, we're looking at about 20 to 30% more expensive. Again, that will obviously vary, but you typically will be earning more money. The Cayman Islands, very expensive, so 80 to 90% more expensive than New Zealand. But again, those salaries are much higher. So it is definitely something worth considering. And as you can see below, we've put in a couple of other things like the cost of a loaf of bread, wine, and so forth, which you can look at in your own time. So I'll pop down to the third slide. So this one I can talk about. I've lived in Australia. I've lived in the UK. Unfortunately, not the Cayman Islands, but I've lived in Perth for quite some time. Australia does have obviously warmer weather overall than New Zealand. So cities like Brisbane and Perth have a very much an outdoor lifestyle. Melbourne obviously has the arts, the culture, the food. So they are, although quite similar to New Zealand in many ways, each city is very different. So that's something to consider when looking at Australia. When you look at London, obviously much bigger city than anything we've got in New Zealand, very dynamic, cosmopolitan, cool weather. Can't really shy away from that. The weather's not as good, but also on the doorstep of Europe. So great for travel and exploring Europe. The UK outside of London, it's a slower pace of life, not as busy as London. Still got some big cities though, Edinburgh, Manchester, Birmingham. They're not small places, but I guess has a bit of a stronger community feel. So you may find that in those locations. With the Cayman Islands, tropical climate, beach, lifestyle, expat social scene, very different offering there as well. So yeah, that's just a bit of a rundown on some of the things to consider in those areas when picking a location.
Great. So we wanted to talk through how you can prepare and give yourself the best shot at securing a job overseas. And again, this is a much compressed list compared to the advice that we can offer you on a one-to-one basis. So we've tried to kind of pick out the key things that we think are important. So be a specialist. And I think that what we've seen through the presentation is law firms tend to want those with specialist skills. And in order to demonstrate these, try to position yourself with your current firm to be working on the most complex, the most high profile matters. That's going to really help you develop your portfolio, and also keep a detailed record of what those matters are, the value, the level of complexity, and also your role on those matters. Make sure you've got your original academic university transcript and also your admittance certificate ready. I had a very interesting scenario a couple of years ago where I placed a New Zealand qualified lawyer into Sydney, and she phoned me in a panic because she couldn't get admittance due to her not having her original certificate. So I jumped into the rescue on a very blustery day, went from Shortland Street up to the court, didn't realise it was quite as big a hill as it was, and got that net sorted out and couriered over to her. So she could have saved herself a lot of stress, but it all ended really, really well. Stay in touch with us for regular market updates. The markets are constantly changing. You know, we've seen a total 180 in London over the last kind of 4 years. The markets will continue to change. So yeah, stay in touch with us. Be realistic on start dates. From offer, unless visa dependent, a firm will expect you to be on board within 2 to 4 months. For roles that are more specialist or more senior, they may wait up to 6 months, but that's kind of about your average. Also understand how your PQE is recognised. Most firms will shave 1 to 2 years off of your current PQE because of you needing to learn new legislation, new processes, new networks, etc. And they want to give you the best shot of getting up to speed quickly but also without having a huge budget to hit because that level of PQE hasn't been understood correctly. Decide on your minimum commitment. So the minimum is really 2 years, unless you're in one of those 6-month contracts and feel like doing more of a kind of a backpacker experience in the UK and Europe. But really, in order for you to get up to speed and start making an impact, a firm would want you on board for at least that. Their ideal is more 4 or indeed longer if everyone's doing well. Some more practical stuff. So if you are relocating with a partner or friends or kids or animals, make sure that you are aware of what those limitations are and what you need to do in order to get the kids into school, or can your partner work in your chosen location? As an example, I had a chap relocate over to Australia and he'd not considered his 60 kg Labradoodle, which we had to sort out at a lot of cost to him a little bit further down the road. Again, just planning for that and making sure he was financially sound would have saved a lot of a headache. Finally, start planning 6 to 12 months ahead. Do your research, where you want to be based, how much a flight, what are you taking with you, what's the overall cost of that process. So again, it's just doing as much prep as you possibly can before you actually hit go on the work search. Shall we move on?
Mm-hmm. So, in summary, committing to a location and understanding the rules of practice are important. Knowing the visa requirements, if any, is now the right time. So, are you looking to move now? Is there things that you can do now to sort of enhance your chances in the year's time? Working hard to make yourself attractive to potential employers. And we're great recruiters, so
obviously we're going to say that.
Obviously, but we really can help, sort of help through that process. Again, as Lisa said, sometimes there's the things you don't think of that can really sort of cause a hiccup down the line. And having moved 50 people to Australia, we've been there and done that, and sort of
understand.
Okay, yeah. So understanding the things that can obviously trip you up. And the typical process of working with a recruiter or with ourselves would be to meet somebody local. So it would be Lisa and myself or our colleagues in New Zealand, just to understand, what your desire is, where you're thinking of going, and obviously putting you to the right colleague that we have based overseas, and just making sure that documentation is in place so that doesn't cause a problem later down the track. Then from there, you'd meet with one of our colleagues on the ground. So whether it's Vicky or our colleagues in Australia, to sort of learn a little bit more about what's going on in those locations from a opportunities perspective. So that will be the first step. From there, obviously, setting up interviews online with potential employers. So they will want to know your location. So it is really important to understand where you want to go. And a great example of that would be Australia, where some of these firms have offices in multiple cities, and you really do need to sort of commit to one city and sort of show a desire to be there in the interview. You can't sort of apply to multiple cities through the same organisation, because then it looks a bit more like a backpacker.
Lacks commitment.
Yeah, so it's important to understand that for sure. From there, we obviously, as a recruiter, just like we would in New Zealand, we help with negotiating any potential offer. With relocating, there's a little bit more to that. It might be sponsorship. It might be things like flights and relocation allowances. So there is actually a little bit more that we can help with in that scenario as well. And then from there, it's acceptance, confirmation of start date, organising logistics, and sort of helping there. We do have a salary guide that you can download on our website. It does have quite a lot of information on Australian salaries specifically. But if any other locations if you're looking for detailed information, you just reach out to us and we can talk through that as well.
Great. So that concludes the presentation. We have had a few questions come in before we started presenting. So look, we'll just cover these off pretty quickly. But again, if any of you guys want to talk to us on a private and confidential basis about your own scenario, start gathering thoughts, we are very happy to kind of have those chats. So first question that came in, is relocation support offered, such as flights, temporary housing or moving expenses? The easiest thing for me to say is it really depends. Normally the UK doesn't, just because of it being more of a flat market at the moment, unless you are extremely specialist and extremely senior and extremely sought after. So that's where you might be able to negotiate all of the above. For the Cayman Islands, as we've already mentioned, they have specific onboarding teams that will liaise with both you and your family. Should you be taking others with you, to make sure that that is a smooth process and financially support that. Interesting though, if you're married and you're taking your partner, the Cayman Islands would support the visa. If you are not, it makes the situation a lot more tricky. The second question we got, what visas do I need to work in the Cayman Islands? As just mentioned, you do, but it's all dealt with for you. So again, that's something that just takes a lot of that stress of moving away.
So the last question we had was, how will my experience translate for when I head back to New Zealand? So and how long should you stay overseas for? Typically, I think Lisa mentioned it earlier, employees, they are looking for some commitment. So 2 to 3 years is sort of what they expect. And likewise, tends to be how long people stay away for. 2 to 3 years is totally fine returning. 7 years onwards starts to become a bit tricky. You've been away for a long time. And salaries as well. I mean, realistically, if you've spent 7 years in London, it does hurt to come back to a place like Christchurch, for example. You're going to see a very different salary. So we say sort of 3 to 4 years is probably quite normal. Anything above that starts to get a bit trickier. 7 years plus is a bit of a challenge.
Great. Also, we have seen experience being welcomed, and law firms are excited to see what New Zealand lawyers have achieved and learn overseas. Many of the partners that you'd be working for back in New Zealand have done OEs themselves, so they understand the quality that brings over from doing an OE. So it's taken really, really well. I think that concludes everything.
Yep. I mean, I've got the details down the bottom. Like I said, this is a very high level overview. We are planning to do some more detailed webinars based on location specifics, and so Australia, the UK, and so forth. So we will do that at some point. But in the meantime, any questions, any advice or help needed, just give us a call, and we'll be happy to help.
Great. Thanks so much, guys.